everyone, and welcome to 1 Million Cups Little Rock. We're excited to have you this week, and we're really excited to hear from our speakers. But before that, I'd like to make a few announcements. For those of you who have not been to 1 Million Cups before, 1 Million Cups is about educating entrepreneurs through storytelling. And what we're going to do today is we're going to hear entrepreneur stories. We're going to learn from asking questions. And by doing this, we're going to build relationships and make our circle bigger. An awesome quote that I've said time and time again, that Nate Olson, the founder of 1 Million Cups program, if we can share 1 million more cups of coffee with each other, we can fundamentally change our entrepreneurial ecosystem. And I strongly believe that because we've already seen results. We've already seen an impact of people coming every week, building relationships with other entrepreneurs in the community, and expanding their circle and growing their businesses. I'd also like to thank the Little Rock Chamber of Commerce for offering this awesome space and for also being my awesome employer and allowing me to work on awesome things like this. The Arkansas Venture Center, which had an awesome, I keep saying the word awesome, which is cool, had an amazing press conference yesterday. Mike Steele and other Arkansas Venture Center members are helping power this event through their time and energy, and a lot of the entrepreneurs are giving their presentations who are members. Also like to thank the Kauffman Foundation, who powers this program on a national scale. So they have over 35, approaching 40 cities that are simultaneously right now with us hosting 1 Million Cups across the nation. And so as they grow together, we have this network of 1 Million Cups attendees that are learning about these stories in different areas and seeing the videos that we put out or the tweets that we put out. And they're learning that entrepreneurship in this country it has a lot to do with connectivity and how we can grow together and become stronger. So thank you for the Kauffman Foundation for allowing us to bring that here to Little Rock so that we can grow our entrepreneurial community. Also like to thank our new video sponsors, WebJive, and then Design Matters for capturing this, because I think us telling these stories are great here, but we want to make sure that those stories are then told to potential 1 Million Cups participants later on down the road. And there's no better way to do that than capturing it on video. So thank them for that. One more thing before we get started. We're all about growing this community. And one great way to do that is engaging on social media, because a lot of people can see it. So please, throughout these presentations, as long as you're respectful and not making noises, we encourage you to take as many pictures, tweet at our respective companies as much as you possibly can, and help us also capture this through your mobile devices and your networks, and hopefully we can get more people to come next week. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Dale Dawson with Bridge2Rwanda, and we're about to learn an amazing story about how he's impacting our community, but also the Rwanda community. Thank you.
Heifer International, that's right down the street here and is one of the big nonprofits globally, their whole business is starting up agriculture businesses all over the world. And they pick the poorest countries in the world to do that. 50 years ago, in the early 1960s, that country was South Korea. And Heifer was critical in helping to starting chicks and the poultry industry of South Korea, which is today huge. But more important, Korea proved that in the last 50 years, in one generation, they went from being one of the 2 or 3 poorest economies in the world to today, they're in the top 15 largest economies in the world. So they demonstrated that this can be done. 20 years ago, there was a genocide in Rwanda, and that country was completely devastated. The leaders of that country stepped up and said, we want to build a great country. How do we build a great country? And I looked at South Korea and Singapore and Taiwan, and all of these Asian tiger economies that in the 60s were poorer than the countries of Africa, and said, how did they do that? And more important, they said, why can't we do that? Why can't Africans build economies that can compete on a global basis? And so they began the question, how do you start up a nation? What is it to build a nation from scratch, particularly one that's been devastated? And they looked at issues like security and healthcare and education and infrastructure. And they began to build their economy based on what they learned was the startup model of the Asian tigers. Well, a group of us from Arkansas got involved with Rwanda about 10, 12 years ago, and we started going over there and we started meeting their leaders, and we said, how can we help you? And they said, all the things that we can do in terms of security, corruption, education, things like that. What we really need to be a great country is we need a vibrant private sector. We have to have companies and industries that make money and provide jobs and bring in currency into our country. And in order to accelerate that growth, in order for our GDP to grow at 7 or 8% or more, there are two things that we learned from the Asian tigers that have to be done. The first one is that we have to open our doors and we have to invite foreign investors to come in here and build businesses. We need foreign direct investment. We need to learn how to build globally competitive businesses by getting people from other parts of the world who've done it to move here and build businesses. And the second thing that goes right along with that, in the long run, for us to be sustainable, we have to have young managers and entrepreneurs who can run those businesses and branch off of those businesses and grow that. So we need a group of young people who have the chance to study abroad, who can go outside of our little country and go see what the rest of the world is doing. And the Asian tigers did those two things, foreign direct investment and opportunities to study abroad. And they said, if you're our friend, one thing you can help us with that we can't do well for ourselves is encourage other people to build businesses here and create opportunities for our best students to study abroad. And so that's what we did to set up Bridge2Rwanda in 2007, is those two goals, those two missions. How do we encourage people to build businesses in Rwanda? How do we create opportunities for Rwandan students to study abroad and then to come back and to be the generation of leaders and entrepreneurs that that country needs to sustain its growth for the next 50 years. The two things we did, the first two things we did, what we focused on mainly, is how do we create opportunities for the best and brightest students to study abroad. And we created a program called the Bridge2Rwanda Scholars. And the Bridge2Rwanda Scholars, we identified the very smartest kids coming out of high school. This year, we had 1,700 students apply for 34 spots in a gap year program to prepare them to compete for international scholarships. This is the fourth year that we've done this. And in the last 3 years, we have actually sent 65 of Rwanda's best students to some of the best universities in the world. We aren't paying for their education. We send American teachers, test prep, college counselors to Rwanda, and those students, those 65 students have earned $13 million worth of scholarships. And they're going to schools like Harvard, Dartmouth, UPenn, Northwestern, Chicago, Vanderbilt, TCU, Morehouse in Atlanta. Those students are part of a 5-year program, a gap year to get them ready, to win a scholarship, and then to bring them back to Rwanda and to get them a good job and get their career started. Our ultimate goal is that within about 2 or 3 years, we will be placing 20 to 30 globally educated students who've been taught entrepreneurship and servant leadership and who are getting placed back into jobs back in Rwanda. And that pipeline of 20 to 30 students is what will populate the entrepreneurial and management community of that country and of East Africa. The second piece of the puzzle is how do we help get foreign investors? And we decided a long time ago, I'm an investment banker. I worked at Stevens Inc. for a long time. And I figured out that it's easier, if you want to do a lot of companies, you go find entrepreneurs to go start them. So our role at Bridge2Rwanda is that we're a catalyst, we're a facilitator, and we're an encourager of foreign businesses. And in the last 5 or 6 years, we've started, or have been involved in starting about 8 different companies. The first one we built is a microfinance bank called Owego Opportunity Bank that is owned by some 3 American charities. And that services, we provide savings accounts to 200,000 poor people whose average savings is about 60 or 70 bucks. We do 40,000 microloans at an average loan of about $350. We helped Scott Ford start Rwanda Trading Company and West Rock Coffee in 2009. That was 5 years ago. That was a complete startup that is now the 3rd biggest exporter of coffee and the biggest exporter of premium coffees out of Rwanda and now Tanzania. We helped another American entrepreneur out of Memphis start an egg farm, which now produces 4,000 eggs a day with the help of Tyson Foods. We had a young volunteer who came over who at 25 came back here, went to work for Chipotle, and then came back to Kigali and started the first gourmet burrito bar in Kigali called Meza Fresh. We started an accounting firm when West Rock Coffee and Bridge2Rwanda, they were constantly stealing our accountants and business managers. So we just started, we got an American CPA to move over there, and he now has a firm that does all of our accounting and serves about 25 foreign investors and nonprofits. We've started a micro hydro energy plant that routes water from rivers and generates electricity called Amahoro Power, and is now hooked into the grid and has sites for at least a dozen more mini hydro plants. We are in our training program, our partner in that is Kaplan. If you studied for your CPA or your college admissions test, if you use Kaplan, we are the only certified Kaplan trainer in Africa, in Kigali. And that's a for-profit business owned by the non-for-profit that runs the Scholars Program. And the last business, the business we're working on today, is called Zamura Feeds. The CEO of Tyson Foods, Donnie Smith, came to Rwanda a year and a half ago and was asked by the Minister of Agriculture, in order for us to increase protein and milk in our country, we have to have commercial feed to be able to grow animals. And and we need a customer for our grain farmers. So Donnie Smith is building the first commercial feed mill in Rwanda, and it went on operations last month, produced the first 8 tons of feed, and it will be the beginning catalyst of creating the poultry industry and the livestock industry in Rwanda and in the East Africa region.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome story, extremely interesting, and I have a lot of questions myself, but first I'd like to see if anybody else has any questions.
You have to get into this.
Good. Do you mind saying your name and?
I'm Glenna Cook, and I'd like to know how in the world you got started with all of this.
You know, I've always been an entrepreneur and investment banker. I was running investment banking at Stevens Inc. 10 years ago, and about the time I got to be 50, I had been doing that off and on for 20 years, and it just didn't seem satisfying anymore. So I decided to take a break. I left and thought that maybe God could figure out some way I could use all these entrepreneurial skills that would actually have an impact on somebody else. And I met an Anglican bishop from Rwanda and took a trip over there and saw all kinds of opportunities for an entrepreneur to make a difference in people's lives. So we just started working, and all of this stuff has happened.
If you say your name and what you do.
Hi, RJ Martino with iProv. I've got kind of a 2-part question. Whenever we talk about building entrepreneurs here in Little Rock, we're always talking about trying to be the next Memphis or the next Austin or whatever it is, we often talk about keeping them within the state. And you talked about at Rwanda, you guys are trying to get them exposed to larger cities, get them trained and bringing them back. Is that comparing apples and oranges, where we want to keep our students here in the state of Arkansas? Or do you see that as a strategy to grow Arkansas as a state as well? That is, sending them to New York, sending them to California, and then trying to get them back? Or are we making a mistake by trying to keep our students here in Arkansas? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, we have exactly the same situation with our scholars, is that how do we get them exposure to the world? Because you can't take it to the next level if you don't understand what the rest of the world is doing. And you have to get out there to do it. On the other hand, if they get out there, there's 1,000 reasons why they don't come back. And so we work very hard to create job opportunities in the country. That's the reason people come back. I mean, Arkansas, like Rwanda, is a place, people who grew up in Arkansas want to live in Arkansas. I mean, I grew up in West Texas. I can tell you, I loved West Texas. I don't want to live in West Texas, okay? So Arkansas has the value is that people who grew up here would love to live a life here. But the issue is, can I have the career and the opportunities here that I could someplace else? And I think Arkansas, because of the quality of life here, is if we can create an environment where there's opportunities to start businesses and have jobs and things like that, that people will come back, because even though they need to leave to develop skills and contacts and networks, the reality is this is a better place to live. I mean, I moved here from Texas 30 years ago. I wouldn't go back to Texas. I like living here. I think this is one of the greatest communities in the country.
Hi, I'm Keenan Abner. I'm with the Arkansas Fellowship. And with all the different, projects and stuff going on in Rwanda, what, from the stateside perspective, from people like us, what is the biggest need? In what way can people like us somehow get involved, whether it's idea generation or, doing something actually physically going there? What kind of stuff can we do to be a part of this?
You can support West Rock Coffee, for one. Part of it is it's important to get out of the cocoon. America is a very privileged, unique place that most Americans who never get out and go see the way 2/3 of the world actually live, that it's important to understand poverty and lack of opportunity around the world, because we have an enormous amount to give and to share. Whether it's international students who come here who need a home and a friend and the building of a network that they're going to go back home and connect to, or it is buying products and supporting products that come from these developing countries, or it's finding opportunities in the course of your life to go be part of the solutions of those countries. Rwanda is attractive because it has leaders, inspiring leaders, that you don't feel like you're wasting your time when you work with these people. We don't do this because they're poor. We do this because they're poor and they work really hard and they have a vision, and our work is not wasted.
Hi, it's Glenna again.
Yeah.
Do you think is possible that any of this will inspire some of these other countries in Africa? Because Africa is such a trouble spot.
Yeah, Rwanda is very much, because it's a tiny little country between the Congo and Tanzania and Uganda and Kenya, that it's very conscious of wanting to be a demonstration to the rest of Africa of what a country that's committed to safety and not corruption and to investing in their people. And you're already starting to see that in other countries, is that everybody tends to rise to the level of people that they're around. And definitely Rwanda wants to be a demonstration to the rest of Africa, just in the same way that Asia has, is that you had a handful of countries start in the 60s, and China and India were latecomers. They came back, they didn't even get started until the 90s. But they do have that demonstration power.
Lynn Folks, my uncle's Gourmet Barbecue Sauce Company. I enjoy the expansion and growth as we reach out and extend ourselves even to the foreign countries. But I feel sincerely that we've got some issues right here in our own country. Our young people coming from a state like Michigan that's been devastated with the industries and the fallbacks and the reductions and very expensive jobs, very profitable jobs. We got a bad situation there that they've been doing for 70 years in the industry and accustomed to those wages, and now everything's folded up. We've got everything, the domino effect of the generational problems of the poor education, the poor schools. Right here in Little Rock, as a former educator myself for 20 years, teaching in the vocational field. So right here, we've got some very primitive stages. We may be America and all that, but as far as our education and our entrepreneurial spirit, has not gotten into the youth, which are our tomorrow and our future.
Yes. The question that I'm often asking is why would we go outside the United States when there's so many needs here? And the answer is that we don't live in a country that's isolated from the rest of the world in almost any way, whether it's communication, whether it's economics or anything else. The rising up of middle classes around the world is good for everybody. If we want to create customers, if we want to create industries, the mindset that somehow we focus only on our own country and that's good for us in the long term is not a good strategy. Different people are called to different callings and different needs. And God bless the people who work on the inner cities of our country and to the issues that are here. But other people are gifted and are called to work around the world. And the truth is we need all of them.
John Chamberlain. I had an experience this week that kind of brings those two things together in a really direct way. I was at an elementary school in Little Rock that has the East program, and the kids there had started a coffee company with the help of West Rock to sell third, fourth, fifth graders making lattes and everything
Sure.
before school to sell to teachers to raise money to send to a school in Rwanda. But they were learning entrepreneurism, they were learning how to solve problems, and it was just kind of a beautiful thing. Of what I'm sure at some level it sprouts from the work you've done, but it's affecting grade school students in Little Rock, trying to give them
Sure.
that idea that they can solve problems and they can make things happen.
It's important that people begin to understand that the world is about relationships and people. And you can be just as close to friends with somebody in Africa or Asia or Europe as you can with people here in Little Rock. And that we're all benefiting if we reach out and build those relationships. You know, we live in a richer world. There's much more opportunity for all of us if we don't shut people out or disregard people, regardless of where they are. And that's as big an issue in a city like Little Rock as it is between here and Africa.
Hi, Devin Foster. I was just wondering, kind of following up on Lynn's question about, you have a lot of learnings on how to develop a private sector in an area that has very little infrastructure. And that does seem like something that could be taken, especially to the Delta, since this is such an opportunity area, a needed area. Have you thought about working with any partnerships in the area to take what you've learned to also bring it to Arkansas and the Delta, or even a bridge between the Rwanda and the
Sure.
Arkansas development organizations and communities?
Yeah, we get asked that question a lot, and microfinance has been used as a tool in the Delta. I think it's Southern Bancorp is an institution that has been doing that for some time. We have and this is not, one of the things that you find in developing countries is that there are no safety nets. And that what we discovered in Rwanda and in Africa is that you have people there who, because they have no safety nets, they will do anything to keep their children alive or to create opportunity for them. And so it's actually easier for us to go into that situation where you have literally tens of thousands of mothers who are going to work every day who have no money and no training, and offer them a loan that they have to pay back and training, because you don't have to motivate them to work. You know, they already work unbelievable hours and do stuff. One of the challenges of the developed world is that we have created safety nets, which there's nothing wrong with and is good. But at the same time, that intensity that you get in a developing country where there is no safety net, you have another issue, which is how do I manage around the safety nets that exist here? And so it's not to say that the problems are similar, the results you're trying to get are similar, but the challenges are more complicated. So, you know, one of the things I like about working in Africa is that if we can create opportunity, we find tens of thousands of people who will jump on it. I mean, it's like a scholarship to go to abroad. We get 1,500 kids show up who have 4 points, who are all banging on the door to get a scholarship or to work a year to get a scholarship.
Hi, it's RJ again. A lot of times I'm involved as a developer with other startup projects, and we're struggling with things like how do we raise $500,000 or how do we get enough money for our partner to quit his full-time job that's making $75,000. Can you explain a little bit about the struggle of starting up in Rwanda that maybe we don't even understand is a struggle? And you talked a little bit about it just now, but is it different starting up in Rwanda than it is trying to start up here in Little Rock? And can you talk about the differences?
The problems, what you hear, the challenges are almost all exactly the same. They're at different levels, you know, is to start up a business where you want to sell charcoal, you know, you need $150. Well, $150 in Rwanda is like trying to borrow $50,000 here. You know, I mean, but it's the same problem. I don't have any access to capital, you know, or I have somebody who has a job and they can't afford to, I mean, in Rwanda, in Africa, if you have a job, you probably have a dozen dependents, from your grandparents to your brothers and sisters. And I mean, they're standing there every day wanting your niece and nephew to be able to have school fees to go to school. And there, the problems are much more significant. I mean, children die every day in Africa because their mother doesn't have $2 for malaria medicine. $2. So these are life and death decisions there. Very, very different. But the problems of entrepreneurship are the same. They're still about capital, access to capital, and they're about training, and they're about finding good people. I mean, the issues don't change. Entrepreneurship, as a general rule, for most people, is something they start with bootstrap capital on a part-time job, and they keep trying something that finally something starts to click and they can justify working on their own, you know, giving up their job eventually. That's the entrepreneurship in all of the world. It's just at different price points.
Actually, we'll have to say
Sure.
Thank you to Mr. Dawson right now. Thank you. One last thing that we do every single week, Mr. Dawson.
Call me Dale, that would be better.
Dale, every single week before we move on, we always ask our entrepreneurs, what can we do to help you grow Bridge2Rwanda?
If you see a Rwandan student in Arkansas, you know, buy them a cup of coffee, a West Rock coffee. Thank you.
Thank you.